Internal Revenue Service IRS tax news. IRS provides answers for certain transportation companies eligible for Treasury grants. IR 2021-145, July 6, 2021, Washington. The Internal Revenue Service today posted answers to questions, there's links to those answers here, that certain transportation companies may have regarding Treasury grants and related taxes. The Coronavirus Economic Relief for Transportation Services, or CERTS, the CERTS Act of the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2021 authorizes the Department of Treasury to provide grants to transportation service providers, including eligible motor coach companies, school bus companies, and passenger vessel companies that experienced annual revenue losses of 25% or more as a result of COVID-19. These companies must generally prioritize the use of the grants for payroll costs, though grants may be used for certain operating expenses, including acquisition of services and equipment needed to protect workers and customers from COVID-19, and the repayment of debt accrued to maintain payroll. Funds not used for eligible activities within 1 year of receipt of the grant must be returned to the Treasury Department. The FAQs, frequently asked questions, posted today answer two important questions. Are the grants taxable? The answer is yes. The receipts of the CERTS Act grant is not tax excluded from the recipient's gross income under the code and therefore is taxable. Are costs for which grants are used deductible? Yes. The costs are deductible to the extent that they are otherwise deductible under the law. The tax law generally permits the payment of wages, salaries, and benefits to employees and other amounts paid to carry out a trade or business to be deducted as ordinary and necessary business expenses. So in other words, if you get this grant here, there's two questions that seem very obvious type of questions that people might ask. One, do I have to include the grant as income? And note that the IRS code in general says that anything that you get, you kind of have to include in income unless we say otherwise. And it looks here like there's nothing that says otherwise. And so they basically say, yes, the receipt of the CERTS Act grant is not tax excluded. And because it's not specifically excluded from the recipient's gross income under the code, it's therefore taxable. And then the next question is, well, if I get this grant so that I have to pay for certain expenses, some of those related to like payroll, then I got the money so that I can pay, and I took the money so that I could basically pay these expenses. But normally I would get to deduct those expenses if I had paid for them myself. So if you, the government, are giving me money to pay off these expenses, do I get to take the deduction even though I'm getting the grant money specifically to pay off the expenses? So on that, it seems to be a positive answer where they say yes. So I'm going to read that one more time. Are costs for which the grants are used deductible, meaning what we paid them for? And they're going to say yes, the costs are deductible to the extent that they are otherwise deductible under the law. So in this case, even though you got money, again, I would interpretate this to mean that there's no other item in the code that's saying that because you got grant money from the government, that means that because you use that money, that it's not something that you can deduct. The code basically says that if you paid for these items, no matter where you got the money, then you can kind of deduct them. It also kind of cancels itself out to some extent, of course, because if you have to include it in income, then you're going to basically have the deduction. The bottom line effect on net income might be, canceling out. But in any case, so the tax law generally permits the payment of wages, salaries, and benefits to employees and other amounts paid to carry on a trade or business to be deducted as ordinary and necessary business expenses. Additional information about tax relief for businesses affected by the COVID-19 can be found on irs.gov. There's a link to that here. There'll be a link to this in the description